Lisa Rehurek is the founder and CEO of the RFP Success Company. It's an organization helping small businesses secure state government contracts. And she is the author of Winning in State Government. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you, George. I'm so excited to be here. Excited to talk to your audience.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Absolutely. Well, I am an Arizona native. We were just having this conversation before we hit record. Arizona native. I've lived here most of my life outside of college in Texas, a little stint in Wisconsin, but I was born and raised on the Mexican border. I now live in the Phoenix area with my two pups, Tuck and Oliver. Loves of my life for the you dog lovers out there, right? I spent a lot of my career in corporate America, first in the hospitality industry, and then I kind of moved into consulting. I cut my teeth very early in my career on RFPs, which is a request for a proposal. And when I started my own business, that niche kind of found me, and that's where my business focuses on. I really love this business for so many reasons. It's interesting in the beginning when people started calling me for it, I was like, "Ooh, do I really want to start a business all about RFPs?" And now I love it so much because the passion that I feel for helping businesses grow, particularly small businesses and the small end of mid market, is just those businesses don't always have the same competitiveness that maybe a large company has. And there's so much beauty in winning a state government contract for these businesses because they can better manage their business. So I have a huge passion for it now. It's so fun to help them win contracts and uh, just see their businesses be able to grow. That's why I do what I do now.
I love it. Who would have thunk
Who would have
looking
thunk?
back?
Yeah. You know what's funny is a friend of mine said to me one day, "Lisa, I think your niche finally found you," because I had been looking for a niche. And I was like, "Oh, there can't possibly be enough work in this niche," which now is laughable, but at the time it felt so small. There's plenty of work out there for sure.
How much work are we talking? How many state or municipal organizations, entities exist in the United States, roughly?
I don't know the number, but I will tell you this, that the what we call the SLED entity, which is state, local, and education, they spend $1.5 trillion on goods and services. So they buy everything. It's shocking. We just helped a mortuary transportation company with their RFP, and we helped a party bike company bid on a boat thing, and we helped a animal rescue. So all these things that you don't really think about, the government buys a whole bunch of stuff, and there's just a lot of opportunity out there for sure. $1.5 trillion a year.
What's the acronym again?
SLED, SLED, state local education.
State local education.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so 1.5 trillion dollars. And those are three awesome examples. I think you said animal rescue, party bikes, and a mortuary service. So there's human beings that work for state and local government, and human beings need all kinds of services and
Yeah.
things. So we're talking about a huge swath of potential companies that can get into this marketplace.
100%. And I know a lot of times people think, well, the government's really hard to work with, or it's really hard to get in with the government. But here's what I'll tell you: you will get a 1 year, a 3 year, sometimes up to a 5 year contract. That is amazing. You are guaranteed pretty much that money. They pay better than the private sector in most instances. And you've got these contracts, so you can manage your business so much better. Like that consistency and that ability to know what's coming down the pike from a staffing perspective. It's just such a great way to be able to manage your business when you get those contracts.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to touch on because you mentioned that in the beginning, it's an opportunity to help businesses grow by having sustainable revenue, knowing, okay, I've got this great contract for one, two, three, potentially even longer, and that allows me to, I don't want to use the term triage, but it just gives you kind of a foundation knowing you have cash flow coming in.
100%, right? And you can anticipate what staff you need, and you can I mean, for small businesses, that's one of the hardest things really, is like, when do I staff up? Do I staff up before or after I get more clients? And when you've got these contracts, you get 3 or 4 really nice contracts, you can very much more easily manage your cash flow and your staffing and all of that.
So we were talking, and I mentioned that when we had connected about you coming on the show, I thought, well, that's really cool. I don't know anything about this. I've been a professional for almost 25 years, and I've never even considered potentially doing an RFP and winning a state contract. I imagine that's not uncommon.
That is not uncommon. And I think it's because people have in their heads, well, the government is hard to work with, or the government doesn't buy what I provide. And if what I would say to anybody listening that's kind of intrigued by this and is maybe looking for a new revenue source is to play around a little bit and see what's out there. There are some really great, what we call aggregators. One in particular is called findrfp.com. It costs like $30 a month. Sign up for a month or two, put in some keywords, and just see what kind of RFPs are out there for your type of business. There are definitely some roadblocks that you have to get over around terms and conditions and insurance requirements and things like that. So you can start reading those terms and conditions, start understanding what kind of past performance you need to provide. But it's really fun when you start looking at that and seeing what's out there. I think you'll be surprised at what is out there and what kind of contracts you can win.
How often do you talk to people and you say, nope, what you do is not a good fit? Has that ever happened?
Yes, but very, very seldom. I mean, usually, or sometimes it's something like we've had a motivational speaker come to us in the past, and they generally will hire those one off, not go out to RFP for motivational speakers. There are some things that they can sole source depending on the entity, but anything over a certain dollar amount, almost always they have to go out to RFP. And I think that's the only example that I can think of is the motivational speaker where we were like, yeah, probably not really worth your time. But also some states have what's called an MSA. They all call it something different, Master Services Agreement. You bid just to get on a list so that all the other agencies within that state can just go and pick and don't necessarily have to go out to RFP for some of that. So there's just a ton of opportunity out there.
Oh, interesting. So in order to be considered, you mentioned we have to have a certain kind of insurance. There's certainly probably lots of terms and conditions. There's background checks. What kind of experience do I have to have? Is there a rule of thumb there?
It kind of depends. I always hate to use that answer, but it does depend on the service that they're asking for, and everyone will be different. Some of them will say you have to have state government experience specifically in this, or some will say you have to have experience in this, and it isn't state government specific. So you can talk about your corporate experience and talk about the different experiences that you have and the past performance that you have outside of the government entity. So it depends on the state, depends on the service offering. There's sometimes ways to get around that. If it's something that you say, hey, I really want this as a revenue source going forward, but we don't have any past performance and they're looking for a lot, we suggest, especially for small businesses, going out and subcontracting with a prime, because you'll get that experience, but they're the ones that are putting their foot forward. They're the ones really responding to their RFP and having to meet all of those requirements. But then you get the experience and you can use that in future RFPs.
What does it mean to subcontract with a prime?
Um, yeah, so generally it's generally a larger company, and they need subcontractors. So many states are saying, hey, we want you to subcontract, particularly with a diverse small business. So even better if you're a woman-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned, these larger prime companies need you desperately. And so you go in as a subcontractor, you better and you're going to go in as a subcontractor for a very small slice of the pie. So for one particular thing that maybe that corporation doesn't have that they need. So for example, this is kind of a crazy example, but if we work with companies that do Medicaid actuarial rate setting, and sometimes they need CPAs and they don't necessarily employ CPAs. So they can go out and subcontract with a CPA firm, bring them in as a subcontractor. That CPA firm better perform well, and then you can use that again as past performance. You're in really great with a prime, and you don't have to take much of the risk. The prime does that and pays you you contract directly with the prime, not the state.
Got it. Perfect.
Yeah.
I think about a lot of what I do in terms of there's an art and a science to it.
Mhm.
So, for example, if I'm prospecting for new clients, how I communicate and ask questions and stuff like that, that's the art of it. But then the science is I need to be talking to this many people. How does that apply, if at all?
It really applies the same way. There's some differences. Some people think, well, I'm just going to wait for an RFP to come out and I'm going to go bid on it. You need to be building a relationship with your target entities long before that, just like you would in any sales environment. And there's the art and the science in that as well. Having conversations, building relationships, asking questions, and getting information around things that they would not put in that RFP. That's going to give you a leg up when you respond, but it's really not any different. The only difference is that instead of you having a conversation all the way through to the sale, you're going to have a conversation up until the RFP hits, then no more conversation could be had. Then you respond to this RFP, and that's the sales mechanism, if you will. So it's just some subtle differences, but the process itself is not all that different.
Okay. So let's use me as an example, or you can say that's a terrible example. Let's use this. Let's say that I own a financial coaching company, and I
Yep.
go to Maricopa County and I say, I wonder if they offer financial coaching to their employees. And let's forget that I said Maricopa County. I have no experience in this. Take me from soup to nuts. We shake hands. You're going to coach me up on how to start winning RFPs. What does it look like from a time perspective, from a effort perspective, stuff like that.
The first place that we would start is really identifying what value you bring and what your offering looks like. Then we go out and we start digging around the state, the county, the cities, and we're looking at their RFPs. Like, do they do anything like this? Picking up the phone and calling the procurement officials and say the city of Phoenix and saying, hey, have you ever seen anything like this come across? Is this something that you offer now? Is this something that you anticipate offering in the future? And then from those conversations, you kind of take it from there. Sometimes we'll say, maybe you can offer some free coaching if you really need to get in the door and it's not something that they do currently. What kind of coaching can you do for free, or can you do any workshops for their vendors or things like that, just to get a foot in the door? So, and then from there, depending on what we find, then we formulate a plan for how you can really dig in and start winning some RFPs.
Okay. And it makes sense that I would want to be building relationships in advance of an RFP coming out, and that if I'm in a position that I want to play the long game, and that the seeds that I plant today, maybe I'll be able to harvest them 6 months, a year, 3 years from now.
Yes, 100%. And, for certain things like financial planning, is that something that they offer? You're going in and you're building a relationship to get them to realize they need it, right? So there's that element of it. Or if you know they've done this in the past, there's ways that you can find copies of contracts. This is one of the best things about state government, is that that information is pretty much public domain if you know where to go and how to get it. So we find out, okay, yes, the city of Phoenix puts out this RFP for financial planning. It's in year 2 of a 3-year contract. You start building relationships with the owner of that contract, because you want to find out, hey, do they like the current vendor that they've got? Are they having any hiccups? What value can we be adding so that we're there and they're familiar with us when that RFP comes out? It's a harder mountain to climb to unseat an incumbent, but it's 100% doable, especially if you've been building that relationship.
Got it. So the owner of the contract, that means like a division head of some kind, or
Yep. So there's a couple of different players. There's usually the key buyer, who's kind of the key decision maker, the agency owner, the agency director, whatever that looks like. But you've also got procurement in there. So every state or city has a procurement official that's generally your point of contact in the RFP itself. So they're going to have very little information. You can only talk to them in at a certain time frame. You can't talk to the agency owner, director, buyer once that RFP hits the street. So you want to be building relationships with both the procurement official and the agent, the owner of that contract. But the owner of that contract is the one that's going to give you the dirt and the real what's keeping them up at night kind of information. So that's the one you want to build a deeper relationship with, but the procurement official is also important.
Got it. And obviously, the more RFPs that I do, the better I will get. But kind of walk me through that process of the learning curve. How do you coach people up and how long it takes them to sort of get it?
Yeah, we do something called a go no go spreadsheet. So we work with our clients to identify the key criteria that they're looking for in a client and a project. So not just because the city of Phoenix puts out a financial planning RFP of some sort, coaching RFP, does not mean that that entity is best for you. So we really work on the front end to identify what are some of those deal breakers, what are some of the ideal things that you're looking for, and we put together a scorecard. So when an RFP comes out, you use that scorecard to score that RFP. And uh, a lot of times companies will just say, well, we can do this, so let's bid. And they bid on everything and they keep losing and losing. And it's a lot of time, it's a lot of resources. So using this scorecard, this go, no go scorecard, really helps you not bid on everything, bid on the things that are appropriate. Some of that is, do you already have a relationship? If you're bidding cold, you have less than a 5% chance to win. And I don't know about you, but that's a lot of time and effort to put in for a less than a 5% chance to win. So we discourage people from bidding on anything that they can bid on and really bid on the things that they should bid on. And we help them develop that criteria up front.
So bidding cold, I have a less than 5% chance of winning the contract. That means that these people don't know me from Adam, that I have no relationship at all.
Yep, exactly. Now, there's a time and a place to do that. If you're just breaking in and you're like, hey, I want to get my name out there, I want to get the information on this contract. Once you bid, the great thing, even if you lose, you'll get scoring sheets. How did the evaluator score you? You can get copies of competitor proposals. So sometimes it's a strategic move to say, hey, let's get in there, get our name in. I would only do this on your very, very high target clients or prospects, but there's so much great information you can gather then and then be better prepared. And now the entity knows you a little bit more. They recognize your name, they've seen things from you, and the next time around it's not going to be as cold, and it also opens the door for you to start building a relationship.
That makes a lot of sense. In terms of region, should I be focused on the area that I live, or does that not matter?
Theoretically it doesn't matter, but there's 50 states, there's a gazillion cities and counties and educational entities within every state. So you shouldn't just say, I can go anywhere in the US, because we just don't have the resources to do that. So I always suggest starting local in your home state, in your home city, unless there's a compelling reason why that doesn't work. Let's say you're based here, but you have staff in Pennsylvania. Well, then it might make sense to bid in Pennsylvania. So it kind of depends on your goals and objectives and the way your company is set up. But best rule of thumb is to start locally.
I love it. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you? How can people engage with you? People who are curious, you've piqued their interest. How do they dip their toe in the water?
Yep, a couple of things. You can go to our website, the rfpsuccesscompany.com. Of course, there's plenty of information out there, but also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Lisa Rehurek out there. You can ask me questions, shoot me a message. I'd love to chat with you, and give you some resources. We've got a ton of resources from free to paid, and we're happy to help share some of that with you. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Lisa your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to the rfpsuccesscompany.com. Check out all the great resources. Pick up a copy of Lisa's book. Listen to our podcast. She does have a ton of great resources on the site, but take her up on the opportunity to connect on LinkedIn. It's Lisa. The last name is Rehurek, and send her a message and find out if this is a great opportunity for you or a terrible one. I'm sure that she will tell you.
Thanks, George. I so appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.